Let's Science is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
3, 2, 1.
We live in a universe of scientific wonders.
Every day, scientists are inching towards breakthroughs which can change our lives.
We're playing our small part in sharing these wonders with you.
That's why today is a fine day for science.
So let's science.
We're going to Mars today, aren't we?
That's right, we are off-planet.
Tell us about, underground water on Mars.
That's it, that is our topic. So, a study published in the Journal of Proceedings of the National Academy of Science has revealed recently that there is most likely an underground reservoir of water underneath Mars' surface.
Yay.
The study was done using data collected from the now retired NASA InSight lander, which used a seismometer to measure the movements on Mars' surface between 2018 and 2022. Now, if you remember, InSight was a lander which left Earth on May 2018 and landed on Mars in November 2018. And it was in the region named Elysium Planitia, which is a flat, smooth plain. It had several instruments on board, and so it had some basic instruments like wind, temperature, sensors, and cameras on board as well. Then there was also an HP3 sensor, which was the heat, the flow, physical properties package, which was used to burrow about 16 feet, or it's about 5 meters, into the surface to measure heat flowing out of the planet. And it would infer the temperature inside the planet. And it also had a rise sensor, which was used to measure the wobble of the North Pole as the sun pushes and pulls in its orbit. And this was to help determine the size and composition of the Martian core. And then the last instrument it had was the SEIS, which was a dome-shaped instrument and sat on the planet's surface, and its job was to measure the seismic vibrations or waves on the planet which came from Mars quakes, meteor impacts, and also from dust storms. So this is all important stuff. So because from these sensors, a picture of how the planet is behaving could be made and also studied. And amazingly, this is how the underground water reservoir has been discovered. So the team of scientists in this study think that there is actually enough water trapped in the rock pores in the middle of the crust of Mars to fill up the oceans on the surface of the planet, and it could cover a depth of up to 1 mile or 1.6 kilometers. So it's quite a lot of water.
That's pretty incredible. Yeah.
Pretty incredible. However, there's a big but. The water always is. The water is actually thought to be located between 7 and 12 miles or 11.5 and 20 kilometers beneath the surface.
Yep.
So I guess this would have implications for the future manned missions to Mars. The big question would be, how do we get to this water? Now, bit of Mars history. It's estimated that Mars was once a wetter planet, and we can see that from all the images we've got back from all the various landers and orbiters that have visited the planet, the selfies
Weren't
and
there
all the
lake beds and everything, or
that's it, yeah. And you can,
am I right? Yeah.
Yes, and you could see like where there were stones like moved by water, as water had flowed over them and things like that. So like very similar kind of terrain to what Earth has sometimes, where there's dry riverbeds and things like that. So, yes, now they think the oceans, they think there were oceans, and they seem to have disappeared about 3 billion years ago when the atmosphere of Mars was lost. And they think it mostly disappeared to also its magnetic field being lost, which meant it couldn't protect its atmosphere from solar winds any longer. And the solar winds so slowly stripped away the atmosphere and left the Martian surface exposed. So While we know there is water trapped in the poles of Mars, this study has offered some clues as to where the rest of the water has potentially disappeared to. So some theories as to where this water went include that it could have been lost to space. So when the atmosphere was stripped away, could have evaporated out. Some could have become ice. Some could have become incorporated into the minerals on Mars or trickled deep into aquifers. And it could also have something to do with the seismic activity of the planet. So the Martian crust is like one giant tectonic plate. Unlike Earth, which has many plates that move and push and pull and slam into each other and cause all the earthquakes and volcanoes and everything else. And this giant plate on Mars has faults and fractures, and as the planet is still slowly cooling and shrinking over time. So we know all the planets were hot once, including Earth, the Moon. Yeah. So the InSight lander was able to detect more than 1,300 Mars quakes while it was operating. And the speed of the quakes also, as they traveled through the planet, could be measured. This was very useful for indicating which substances exist beneath the Martian surface. So the speed of the seismic waves just really depends on the composition of the rock, where there are cracks and what fills the cracks. The data from InSight that's been gathered was used to put into a mathematical model of rock physics used here on Earth to map underground oil fields and aquifers here on Earth. So it's the same technology used on Earth for Mars, and this showed that the data best matches up with a deep layer of volcanic rock that is filled with water, which is quite amazing that they could use all that data, put it into a computer, and water comes out as the answer. So it's been hypothesized in the past that there could be liquid water under the surface of Mars, but this is the first time the data has actually been collected and can confirm that this is the most likely substance that is there, or it's most likely that it is there, and is probably stored more like a deep underground mud. And so it demonstrated that the liquid water does exist on the Martian surface, but not as lakes as we would love. But yeah, but
that
as
was
liquid
the question
water,
I was going to ask next. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. But it is stored as liquid, saturated sediments or aquifers. And this is exciting for a few reasons, not just because it's likely confirmed that underground water does exist, but it also means that since on Earth underground water like this contains life, could it mean that the same thing for habitats to exist beneath the surface of Mars, where there are little tiny Martians are kept warm and wet and protected from the exposure to the sun.
Little Martian mud skippers or something.
Exactly. Tiny little...
That's not scientific at all. Yeah.
Tiny little microorganisms or little tiny little things that, since there's a beautiful habitat there, are they there? And as always, this study has opened the doors to potential further study in the future of water on the Mars surface. And obviously the authors of this study would like to send up more seismometers and spread them out over the surface to get even more data than just the one seismometer could. So science, right? It is so good. You can use this data to build a picture, get amazing information, and as always, more questions. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. Probably water on Mars.
I was looking at, I was looking at the article that as you were talking, and the diagrams on it are really helpful too, because it shows like the depth of where it is. And so you start to imagine the difficulty of, all right, if we get humans to Mars and they want to access that water, if that's the plan, how do they get to it? Yeah. And what is it? The other thing I was thinking was, because I was going to ask that question, is it like the aquifers here on Earth? It's not. So then there's that issue of they've got to filter, extract, and what lives in it. So there's all these things all these factors you've got to look at. Yeah.
Many factors.
Yeah. Yeah. It's exciting because we know that there are plans for Mars at some point, maybe in our history, who knows when. And even Dom posted in the Let's Science chat about how SpaceX is hoping to send one of its starships to Mars, uncrewed first of all, but like within years. So not a decade, but within years.
It's going to be very soon. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. That's if they can catch it first, because that's the next part. I think the next test is to launch it and for the booster to come back and for it to be caught in the little chopstick tower, not little, but in the chopstick tower that they've got. So that will be exciting because that is steps on the journey to Mars. And it's either going to be a successful catch or it's going to be the biggest fireball you've seen.
Either way, I'm happy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a big fireworks show. Yeah, big boom. Yeah.
No, isn't it amazing how I just love watching the progression of SpaceX and the technology and the Starship and like how far they've come from. Every test was an explosion to finally flying and having some successful flights, mostly successful. And it's really good to see that.
If any company has mastered failing upwards, it was it.
Yes.
Yeah. That's great. No, thank you for sharing that. And so if anyone who's listening has feedback on water on Mars, please share with us, or if you want to share the excitement, because maybe if we're fortunate in our lifetime, they'll be able to access it and we'll learn more about it and see if there are microbes in there. We'll just see how we go. Yeah.
That's the part that I really want to find out, if there is life on Mars. I don't mind if we habitat, if we actually make it as a human, but like to actually confirm yes or no, that would be wonderful.
And what does it look like and how is it different to microbes?
Yeah, is it the same? Do they develop the same?
Exactly, yeah.
Are they different?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is it completely foreign to what we know, like our understanding and all that kind of stuff?
Let's Science is brought to you by StarQuest Media and is a fortnightly podcast that brings you the scientific wonders of our universe from a distinctly Catholic point of view. For more from Caroline, Lindsay, and friends, listen to the StarQuest show, Catholics of Oz. Find links from today's show at sqpn.com/science and find the Catholics of Oz at sqpn.com/Oz. Be sure to follow the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you can find podcasts, or on the SQPN YouTube channel. The generous donations of our patrons at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue Let's Science and all the shows at StarQuest, which makes our nonprofit mission possible. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. Join us next time for more scientific wonders, and thank you for listening to Let's Science on StarQuest. Here's another show on the StarQuest network you're sure to enjoy, The Secrets of Stargate. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Stargate.